Program contains coarse language.
How organised is the illegitimate, unlawful movement of waste in Australia?
Oh, extremely organised and extremely profitable.
It is a licence to print money. The people in the street have got no idea at all.
The rogue element have continued to fly under the radar, and the good part of the industry have had to pay the penalty for that.
Cannot believe what I'm saying. It is totally unsustainable, and it makes a mockery of a very large part of Australia's recycling system.
Welcome to Four Corners. Australians produce around 50 million tonnes of waste annually. That's 2 tonnes per person per year. Many of us sort our rubbish carefully, separating glass and plastics and paper, putting our faith in curbside recycling programs. But as tonight's programme reveals, that faith may be misplaced. Much of the waste we think is recycled ends up in landfill. Some of it is trucked interstate to dumps. And some unscrupulous operators are making fortunes along the way. Tonight, we follow your rubbish across the country and track down the players exploiting a weak system. Caro Meldrum-Hanna investigates.
It's Recycling Day on Sydney's Lower North Shore. Across Australia, all year round, the contents of our yellow lid bins are collected and taken away to be sorted and recycled. More than a third of it is glass. We generate almost 1.5 million tonnes of used glass annually.
We receive 220 tonnes a day, so about 35 to 40% of it is glass. So about 80 tonnes of glass.
Nathan Ong is the manager of this recyclables sorting facility in northwest Sydney, owned by Polytrade, one of Australia's leading recycling companies.
This is the glass here?
Yeah, that's the glass. That's a 10 mil and above, and that's the finer glass, 10 mil and below.
Okay.
He's about to blow the whistle on one of the waste industry's dirty secrets.
I'll ask you to be honest. Have you had to landfill some of this glass?
Yes.
How much glass went to landfill?
Thousands. Thousands of tonnes.
Thousands of tonnes. What's it like as a recycler to know that all of this material that we hope is being recycled, but actually is going into landfill?
Well, it's devastating.
The glass recycling market has collapsed. The largest curbside glass receiver in New South Wales, Benedict's, stopped accepting used glass in 2015. It's now far cheaper for companies to import glass bottles from overseas than to make recycled ones, meaning there's more and more used glass accumulating with nowhere to go.
How do you think consumers and Australians are going to feel when they know that this glass,
There'll be an uproar. There'll be an uproar if communities or, residents know that their bottles aren't recycled. It is shocking. It is shocking.
Stockpiling large amounts of waste is banned in New South Wales. So every day, Polytrade bags tons of glass and ships it overseas. The other half is tipped into massive trucks, 30 tonnes per load, and sent to Victoria. So what's happened to all that glass? We can show you. You're looking at a warehouse packed to the rafters with glass. A sea of bags bursting at the seams. Collecting cobwebs. Polytrade has 9 of these warehouses, crammed with around 100,000 tonnes of glass. And there's no more room left. I cannot believe what I'm saying. Perfectly good material that we believe is being recycled is actually languishing in giant plastic bags. It's accumulating more and more every hour of every day, stockpiled in warehouses just like this one, dotted across Victoria, away from public view. It is totally unsustainable, and it makes a mockery of a very large part of Australia's recycling system.
In the 90s, glass was the backbone of the industry. It held up recycling, and today it's the reverse.
Now it's
of zero value at best.
A 5-minute drive down the road reveals quite a sight. To the untrained eye, it looks like a giant mound of dirt sprouting weeds. When the sun hits, it glistens. This is a mountain of unrecycled glass at the back of a recycling centre in Melbourne. It belongs to industry giant Visy Corporation, owned by Australia's paper and packaging tycoons, the Pratt family.
We're not Robinson Crusoe on this. There's other companies with similar problems with this commodity.
Is it time to just stop recycling glass?
I think that discussion should get held, yes.
We've obtained this confidential 2017 report, an analysis of the glass crisis, commissioned by industry. It confirms the landfilling of glass, particularly in regional areas, and that if the truth becomes publicly known, there'll be more than just negative publicity, that it will seriously damage the community's confidence in recycling. If I asked you then to describe what sort of mode the recycling industry is in at the moment, what is it?
Very stressed, extremely stressed.
Grant Musgrove is the CEO of the Australian Council of Recycling.
We've got governments taking landfill levy and not allocating it for their intended purpose, regulations that aren't strong enough to give support to legitimate operators, good operators. We don't have the support for those. Elements within the industry are regarded as illegitimate operators.
Have you raised your concerns, communicated this very serious situation to government? Are governments aware?
Absolutely.
State government?
Absolutely.
Federal?
Absolutely.
According to Australia's peak recycling body, a huge amount of our recyclables aren't being recycled at all.
Some of it is. I mean, approximately half of it is, 50%. The other 50% either goes to landfill or disappears, and that can be disappears overseas. There are various options, but it goes somewhere. Everything has to go somewhere. It's illegally dumped, stockpiled, landfilled, etc. Clearly, some of it's gone up in flames.
The recent fire at a recycling facility in Coolaroo, Victoria, is a big wake-up call. The plastics caught fire. Hundreds of homes were evacuated. Around Australia, there's a glut of close to worthless material piling up. Why was there a large stockpile of plastic there? Why hadn't it been recycled? What's going on?
Commodity prices are very low. Things that were selling for $200 a tonne are down to $20 a tonne, such as plastics. So we're currently in a commodity price slump in the recycling industry, just as in the mining industry.
The issues with recycling are symptomatic of a highly dysfunctional industry. In New South Wales, in an effort to drive more recycling and less landfilling, the regulator charges waste companies a fee of up to $138 for every tonne of waste they send to landfill. The expense has spawned a flourishing rogue industry. How to avoid paying the New South Wales landfill levy. One way is illegal dumping. In December 2014, in the tiny town of Spencer, nestled on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, residents Lynn Barrett and her husband Alan woke to discover a huge illegal dumping operation had come to town. We're told at one point, up to 50 trucks a day were barrelling through here. Most of them, like this one, quickly photographed by Lynn Barrett, unmarked, with no company names or logos. More and more trucks. Weeks, months are passing. Did you complain?
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Who did you contact?
The EPA dumping hotline. And also, that's when I sent the first email off to Gosford Council and received no response at all.
What did you make of that? That lack of action?
That somebody knew what was going on and this was being allowed to continue for more than 12 months.
This is where all those trucks were ending up. Brazenly dumping vast amounts of waste, including asbestos, on a private property. Filling sensitive wetlands with rubbish. Construction and demolition waste was making its way into the Hawkesbury River.
I contacted council, and in response to that I got a call from a man from the illegal dumping squad.
What did he say?
He said he was aware of what was going on and he'd been down for a look, and he had been warned off the property for attempting to go on there, and he decided that it was too big for their organisation and he was going to hand it on up to the EPA.
Four Corners can reveal the local illegal dumping squad did refer Spencer up to the New South Wales EPA. But a corrupt officer from the Western Sydney dumping squad intervened.
Hey, good. One quick question. Yeah. Do we have anyone at Gosford? Gosford.
Yeah. I'd have to make a phone call. I'd have to make a phone call.
The officer's name is Craig Izzard, a former rugby league player turned illegal dumping policeman. He didn't know it, but his calls were being recorded by the Independent Commission Against Corruption. He'd been under surveillance for months, the key target in the ICAC's probe into corruption in the government-funded illegal dumping squad. Captured on camera in October 2015, driving this blue sedan, visiting his bagman at his waste yard. Craig Izzard was accepting under-the-table cash payments from illegal dumpers in exchange for thwarting his own team's investigations.
Sam, how you going, mate?
Good, mate. How you doing?
It's December 2015, and Craig Izzard is on the line to a man running the illegal dump at Spencer. Four Corners can reveal his identity: a Western Sydney-based waste operator, Sam Abbas. He's just been inspected by the local illegal dumping squad, known as the RID Squad.
You know when the RID Squad bloke came there?
Yeah.
What did he say that you got to do? Did he say you got to do anything or just say stop?
He didn't say nothing because the problem... See what the story is.
On tape, Sam Abbas makes a disturbing claim that he wasn't the only one trashing the environment at Spencer. Council was in on it too.
For 20 years, Gosford Council, have been dumping their illegally contaminated material because the owner I bought this property off a year ago, he was the manager for the transport for Gosford Council.
Okay.
So then they've been dumping there and they were still dumping there when I bought the property, and I used to leave the key for them, and they're like, yeah, no, it's sweet. So I thought it was all normal, dumping material right up to the river. That's fucking illegal.
Craig Izzard advised Sam Abbas to keep the Gosford Council card up his sleeve while he found out whether the New South Wales EPA was planning to investigate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you want to keep that with you. So yeah. So I'll chat with someone at the EPA and see whether they got any notification on it. All right, leave with me.
All right, mate.
Yeah, I'll get in that. Bye.
All right, mate.
2 weeks after that phone call, Craig Izzard's bagman had good news for Sam Abbas.
أنا قال لي tell you mate إنه حول ال EPA they're not going to proceed.
Yeah.
وحيتركوها بGosford Council hands. قلت له good news.
Oh, beautiful. All right.
يعني في ساعد أي problem أي مشكلة أي كذا ورجي الكاش بتلاقيه ركب جناح وطار.
Gosford Council took no action, and the New South Wales EPA didn't halt the dumping either.
They're not competent, they're not capable of having the guts to get out there and issue the stop work orders because the law's on their side. Why are they so scared to get out there and do their job?
Illegal dumping is an abhorrent environmental crime, and in that case in particular, that's a matter that's still under active investigation from us, so it's difficult to give you specific comments. But as soon as the EPA became aware about it, we shut that operation down immediately.
I have an email here, and I'm just going to show it to you. But correspondence tendered to ICAC shows the New South Wales EPA didn't act immediately. The New South Wales EPA knew about the dumping at Spencer since January 2015, but didn't stop it until May 2016, a year and a half. How do you explain that?
With illegal dumping, there are actually many players and actors that are associated with illegal dumping, and in this case we needed to identify all the relevant players and actors so that we could actually bring forward our investigations to make sure that we actually prosecute the people most culpable for this.
In the end, the illegal dump at Spencer was put to a stop in May 2016, when the New South Wales EPA finally inspected the property, issuing this clean-up notice. It lists multiple breaches, including the dumping of asbestos. An estimated 20,000 tonnes of waste were illegally dumped at Spencer, representing $2.6 million profit from avoiding the New South Wales Waste Levy fee. So far, the only penalty imposed is an administration fee of $506.
Our lawyers recently followed it up to say, what's happening here? Why haven't you done anything? And haven't gotten a straight answer at all. We've essentially gotten the fob off, We've gotten pushed out the door. Yet this is an estimate of 20,000 tonnes of waste dumped right on the edge of the Hawkesbury River. I mean, it's staggering.
Has anyone been fined over the illegal dumping operation at Spencer?
So these are very complex investigations with many actors.
Has anyone been fined for the dumping at Spencer?
These are very complex Legal dumping matters are very complex.
You've said that a few times now, but with all respect, could you answer the question directly? Has anyone been fined?
So this matter is currently being investigated, and it'll be a matter that we'll put before the courts.
Okay, there's a bloke over there. There's a pile of rubbish over here. Okay, approaching to the left.
You, Sam?
We found Sam Abbas at his Spencer property, but he wouldn't answer our questions. He's been sending me intimidating text messages since. The New South Wales ICAC didn't make any findings about Sam Abbas or the illegal dump at Spencer. How organised is the illegitimate, unlawful movement of waste in Australia?
Oh, extremely organised and extremely profitable.
The rogue element have continued to fly under the radar, and the good part of the industry have had to pay the penalty for that.
The waste industry is worth $12.5 billion annually and growing. There's a lot of money to be made. You can get rich quick. One of the biggest operators in the business is Bingo. From humble beginnings, a small construction and demolition skip business bought for less than $1 million in 2005, Bingo floated on the stock exchange in May 2017. It's currently worth almost $700 million.
An exciting, fresh approach to the waste industry is what we're trying to do.
Exciting and fresh approach to the waste industry. Bingo's CEO, Daniel Tartak, has agreed to take us on a tour of its recycling facility in Auburn, Western Sydney.
This is coming from the construction demolition market, big infrastructure projects, all the infrastructure work getting built at the moment. A lot of that waste is coming to our facilities.
Can you name some of those?
So the North Connects project, the West Connects project, it's a lot of the big roadways getting built.
Wow, big government projects.
Yeah, definitely.
Bingo is endorsed by Planet Ark and the Green Building Council. It says it recycles 85% of the waste it receives.
We don't spare any expense. It's the best of the best because that's what we're all about. We're trying to raise the bar in the industry, do things better year on year.
Daniel Tartak tells us Bingo has one main goal.
Recycling, diverting waste away from landfill. That's our number one goal in this business. Trying to divert as much as we can away from landfills. We don't own a landfill. Everything that we've tried to do in the last 4 to 5 years is on recycling, diverting waste away from landfills.
Bingo may not own a landfill, but we can reveal Daniel Tartak's family does. This is Mangrove Mountain Landfill, set on a corner of a community golf course on the New South Wales Central Coast. It was bought by Tony Tartak, the founder and patriarch of Bingo, in 2011. Would it be fair to say that the waste industry the regulation of it is out of control?
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. We wouldn't end up with something like Mangrove Mountain, if it wasn't out of control.
The Mangrove Mountain saga began in 2001, when Gosford Council and the New South Wales EPA gave the green light to its previous managers for a portion of the golf course to be remodelled, using clean waste as fill.
It started out as an existing golf course, a 9-hole golf course, which was going to be expanded into an 18-hole golf course, and that required a small amount of inert fill to be deposited in a couple of depressions just to smooth it out a bit.
When did the problem start then?
It started from day one, really. Fill has just come in and continued to come in with no end.
The authorities gave approval for 240,000 tonnes of clean fill to be deposited at Mangrove Mountain. How many tonnes were actually deposited there?
It's around about 1 million tonnes.
1 million tonnes.
1 million tonnes, right?
Photos obtained under Freedom of Information document a growing mountain of waste dumped over a decade. Hundreds of thousands of tonnes, including prohibited material, chemically treated timber, were being dumped with reckless abandon, and the pits had no protective lining. Other documents reveal Gosford Council was even transferring rubbish from its own waste management facilities and dumping it at Mangrove Mountain, 121,000 tonnes over 8 years, in breach of its own development consent. A Gosford Council report detailing the breaches was also buried.
It was just ignored. The problem was ignored throughout, and it has continued to be ignored throughout. It's like they just didn't care.
How would you characterise, in a word or a phrase, the Mangrove Mountain saga?
A disaster. It's not in accordance with the licence.
Gary Chestnut was the development manager at Gosford Council with 25 years' experience to his name when, in September 2012, he stumbled across some photographs of Mangrove Mountain.
And I had a look and freaked out. And within an hour and a half, I was at council solicitors saying, we've got a problem. You know, it looked like a quarry site. It wasn't a remodelling.
The so-called golf course remodelling project bore little resemblance to the original plans. By this time, the Tartak family company had been running the landfill for a year, and the Tartak's other company, Bingo, was at work on the site. These photos show Bingo's skips, trucks and earth movers all over Mangrove Mountain.
When you went to site to Mangrove Mountain, who did you meet there and where were they from?
I met individuals. The individuals identified themselves as representatives from the Bingo company. They presented business cards with a company called Bingo.
We've obtained this confidential internal memo, dated August 2012, a New South Wales Office of Water investigation into activities on the site under the operation of Bingo Group. It found the groundwater table had been breached, with a high potential for contamination. It recommended prosecution be considered. After years of inertia, Gosford Council finally took legal action against the operators of the landfill. Bingo was struck out of the case. The matter was settled out of court. The remaining landfill operator, a company controlled by Tony Tartak, was never prosecuted. Gary Chestnut is now running as a candidate for the local council election.
If you had your time over again, would you have taken legal action against any other body?
The answer to that question is yes, very clearly. From my perspective, the Environmental Protection Authority. I know that's quite alarming, recognising that the lead state agency responsible for the environment in New South Wales.
We've engaged an independent environmental expert who has gone through all the historical data, all the information, all the community's concerns, all the records held by the EPA. The expert has gone through those issues and has made an assessment that the landfill isn't impacting the environment and has given both us and the community and council advice about how the landfill can proceed.
At the moment, it's a loss-making exercise where the current owners are trying to fix a problem that they've inherited. But Bingo is focused on recycling and diverting waste away from landfills.
Now a publicly listed company, the history of Mangrove Mountain is an uncomfortable topic for Bingo's CEO, Daniel Tartak.
Well, just because the family owns the landfill and the family's a shareholder of Bingo doesn't mean the two are related. Bingo has no interest in the landfill, never did.
But your family does?
Correct.
So what is your family's interest in that landfill?
My family's interest are fixing an issue that's been up there for many years. They want to deliver on building this 18-hole golf course.
So your family wants to deliver on building an 18-hole golf course. How are you going to build that 18-hole golf course?
To build the 18-hole golf course, there's some landfilling involved.
How much?
I'm not sure. I'm not across the detail of the landfill.
Tony Tartak's company is set to be awarded a further licence to fill another 1.3 million tonnes of waste over 10 years, despite the many breaches by various operators spanning a decade at Mangrove Mountain. The New South Wales EPA now stands to make $180 million from it in waste levy fees.
They've gone to water, and the reason they've gone to water is because of the money involved. If you get
You're saying the EPA is putting what profit before policing?
Oh, definitely. It's about environmental protection. It's not about environmental, revenue-raising authority.
It's been put to us that the New South Wales EPA has put profit before policing. What's your response to that?
I can absolutely say that's not the case. The EPA, we take our role seriously. We've got a strong waste strategy in place. We've got funding from government from the waste levy, and we've got strong enforcement. And I think we're recognised by the other jurisdictions, EPAs around Australia, of having some of the tightest, toughest and more innovative regulatory approaches across Australia.
It's a brazen, unlawful waste facility, and the EPA have been powerless to stop it.
An industry insider is taking us on an aerial tour to show us firsthand what's really going on around New South Wales. Illegal dumping isn't the only problem.
Look, it's pretty scary. It's a scary industry. There are dark elements in this industry, and that's why I'm doing it anonymously.
He's asked us to conceal his identity to protect him from retribution.
Well, the good guys lose business to the bad guys, essentially. That's essentially what it is.
The industry insider tells us the rogue operators are everywhere. Unlicensed facilities, waste being exhumed, stockpiles of asbestos. It's all about avoiding the waste levy charged by governments to legally dispose of waste.
There's widespread scamming of the waste levy, yes.
How many millions of dollars would that represent? Could you put an estimate?
Over $100 million per year is being lost to the New South Wales Treasury by these activities.
One activity in particular has taken off: the interstate movement of waste. Even licensed landfills are doing it.
Caro, this whole situation with waste being transferred from these landfills and material being sent to southeast Queensland is getting bigger. It's getting more organised, and the longer it goes on, the harder it will be to stop. And the regulator has been told time and time again that the longer this activity goes on, the more organised it will become, and the more difficult it will be to undo.
And the biggest names in the business are involved.
The waste that we generate in New South Wales needs to be recycled. And if it's leaving New South Wales, it's not getting recycled, we believe, the way it should be. It does attract a lot.
Bingo is sending around 150,000 tonnes of waste, including contaminated material, to landfills in Queensland, where the levy is non-existent.
So would that pile all be going to Queensland?
Yes, that pile would be.
How often do you have to send this stuff to Queensland?
Daily.
Daily.
Bingo is one of many companies doing it. As night falls, at facilities across New South Wales, the interstate waste trade begins.
Copy on 1. Got a truck coming in, bro. What's your taillight? There's 2 in front of you. So I'm loading 1, I've got 2 in front of you.
At Bingo, on this one night alone, chatter on the two-way radio reveals 9 B-doubles are loaded with waste bound for Queensland. The practice is so lucrative, it spawned a whole new transport and logistics industry in its own right. Middlemen contracted by waste companies to shift waste across the border day and night. Four Corners has discovered there are at least 5 major waste transporters now operating.
Who's doing it?
Well, there's a whole new industry that's propped up around it. Individual companies have been formed with this is their business. This is their core business.
Can you name some of those companies?
Some of those operators are not backwards about, how can I put this? I may have fears for my own personal safety if I name those companies.
Why?
Because I'm speaking out and blowing the whistle on something that's going to cost people hundreds of millions of dollars if it's stopped.
So where is all that rubbish ending up? We followed the waste stream all the way to its final destination, to a series of old mine sites in southeast Queensland. From the air, the scale is extraordinary. Massive dumps right next to housing developments. Queensland has become the dumping capital of Australia. We're standing right outside a massive landfill run by a company called Cleanaway. It's one of several in the area of Ipswich. Most of them are on top of old coal mines. Doesn't sound like much of a problem until you see this. There is smoke coming up from the ground and it stinks. It's acrid, it smells of tar, it's very strong. Underneath us, there are fires constantly burning. On top of that, millions of tonnes of waste, including hazardous materials like asbestos. The fear is that that waste will catch fire and release who knows what into the atmosphere. Those fears have been realised. In July 2017, Cleanaway's pit caught fire. Local resident and waste industry activist Jim Dodrell managed to catch it on camera, recording this home video. How would you characterise what's happened to Ipswich?
It's just this giant waste dump, basically, for all of Australia to bring their waste to.
Residents tell us they believe Ipswich Council has handed their town over to the waste industry, approving 5 massive dumps in recent years.
Oh, it smells, it's putrid.
Rotten nappies? That's what it smells like.
Most people describe it as that, as
nappies.
dirty nappies.
Dirty nappies.
We've been the ones out there doing the monitoring. We haven't seen the council or the state government, the EPA, doing any monitoring.
But not once?
Never.
How long have you been monitoring these places?
Since 2011.
The message is that this will all be over in a matter of years. Those big holes in the ground will be full.
Yeah. We might be there in those holes. That's the thing.
Well, the question is what damage, long-term damage is being done in the meantime.
I'm going to put a figure to you. The last figure that we know definitely, this was for the past financial year, was over 500,000 tonnes from New South Wales alone.
Oh, wow.
It's frightening.
How can they do that? How can they think that's okay? All in, for a bit of cash?
In 2014, New South Wales introduced a law known as the Proximity Principle to stop waste being transported more than 150 kilometres. But there were loopholes you could drive a truck through. Industry estimates the amount of interstate waste being dumped in Queensland has almost doubled in the past year to around 1 million tonnes annually.
As we sit here today, there's more than 60,000 tonnes a month that's transported north. We were promised that corporations who transported their waste in defiance of the proximity principle, would be fined $15,000 per load, and the drivers would be fined $7,500 per load.
Anyone been fined?
Nobody's been fined.
Not one fine?
Not that we're aware of. There's been no fines, no prosecutions whatsoever.
We said very clear to the industry that we're not going to enforce the proximity principle and that we're looking at having a national approach to having a proximity principle in place.
This email, obtained by Four Corners, was sent by industry to the office of the New South Wales Environment Minister in June 2017. It reveals one Western Sydney landfill is loading waste into shipping containers and transporting it by rail to southeast Queensland, avoiding $17 million annually in waste levy fees. The company behind that Western Sydney landfill is one of the biggest in the business, Dialer Dump.
If you've got excavations, renovations, after party jubilation, soil or sand and stuff, junk or waste, filling up your place, called Dialer Dump, no fuss.
The man behind Dialer Dump is Ian Malouf. The opening of Ian Malouf's landfill in 2012 was a lavish affair. Trucks full of French champagne, oyster bars, tap dancing on skips, spit roasts and lion cubs. Waste has delivered Ian Malouf riches and power.
Can I officially declare open this terrific new waste facility and congratulate Ian again for everything that he's done. Well done.
In public, Ian Malouf has been highly critical of the interstate waste trade.
Been going 4 years now, enough's enough. It's escalating to 1 million tonnes a year, $135.7 million out of the pocket of government, ripping our roads to pieces, so common sense will prevail.
But our surveillance has revealed Dialer Dump is sending waste interstate too. As evening approaches, massive rail containers enter and depart Dialer Dump's depot in Sydney. They're being loaded with waste, diverted away from Ian Malouf's landfill, delivered instead to the Chullora rail yard, sent by train to Queensland, exploiting a loophole in the law. Ian Malouf has told Four Corners Dialer Dump is transporting waste to Queensland to avoid suffering further commercial disadvantage. He declined to be interviewed on camera. Now, he's proposing a giant solution to stem the tide.
Welcome to the Next Generation Project Update.
It's called the Next Generation, a power plant that will burn more than 500,000 tonnes of construction and demolition waste for energy.
We don't have an energy from waste plant, all right? So it's time. It's time we caught up. We will lead the world in this. There's no doubt about it. Number one, we will be the best in the world.
If it goes ahead, it would be the world's biggest waste incinerator. Ian Malouf wants to build it smack bang in suburban Western Sydney. But he's facing considerable opposition.
We have to tell everybody. I don't care. Okay, I don't care if they give it the green light. There's no way in hell this is going to go ahead. I will get...
We'll blockade it.
100 cars in that street. I will blockade that street. I will blockade that site so nothing is going to get built.
Western Sydney residents and local councils are mobilising against the Next Generation. The New South Wales EPA and the Health Department are also opposing it.
I mean, they absolutely are against this, and they said in their submission, and I quote, increased hospital admissions as well as death from heart and lung disease could be caused by this incinerator. So what does that tell you?
Ian Malouf has responded to the community by accusing them of spreading fake news.
And he sends us letters of threats of what will happen and, gives us timelines to respond by.
There's a small minority scare campaigning against this plant. The people of Blacktown, instead of saying this is the worst thing in the world to come to us, they should be proud of it and help us feed the children that have got there with it. And I say it in all honesty, all right?
Garbage businessman Ian Malouf.
The Next Generation proposal is currently before the New South Wales Department of Planning.
This is a major policy issue.
Well, let's get the vote on in Parliament soon. Let's get it done.
Okay,
let's test these buggers out.
Yeah, well,
The New South Wales Greens are moving to block it.
The proposal as it is actually dirtier than coal in terms of...
Dirtier than coal?
Dirtier than coal in terms of...
That's a big call.
It is.
Really?
It's dirtier than coal in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions.
But the industry describes this as a clean source of energy, as a clean source of power, as renewable even.
Well, that's just total bullshit. You can't tell me that you're going to burn millions of tonnes of plastic, vinyl, concrete, gyprock, wood, and that's clean green energy. It sounds to me like a big, dirty waste incinerator in the heart of Western Sydney, and that the risks, the pollution is going to be utterly unacceptable. It's certainly unacceptable to the residents.
The waste industry is a mess.
It is a licence to print money. Like, the people in the street have got no idea at all.
We need to lift the lid on the waste industry and show people what is actually happening and correct it, you know.
We need ministers to bang their heads together and come up with a national strategy, a national coordinated response.
The onus is now on our governments to step in and clean up the mess.
Before you put your rubbish out this week, ask your local council where it's going. You'll find more information and responses to our questions on our website. Next week, the Greens in disarray. Is the party imploding? See you then.